Hey.
Peace and Black Power family. It's your Harlem educator, author, and activist, the Black Liberation Coach, Brother Ajay Tayimba. I'm filming live on location in that wonderful historical and political village of Harlem, New York City. But we're also coming live from a whole nother place in these United States. And we are going to be, I believe, in Ohio, if I am correct. And we're going to be welcoming a brother, a really brilliant brother. I don't use the term lightly. In a time where everybody's a genius because they wrote an album, did one dance, choreographed one video, they're a genius. I don't go with that. I think brilliance and genius sort of designations should be used sparingly so they retain their meaning or they become cliche. This is a brilliant brother right here. If you read his blogs and whatever else, I'm going to introduce our brother properly. All right. I'm going to introduce our brother properly, the way he deserves, family. And we have Dr. James Thomas Jones III. Dr. James Thomas Jones III is a graduate of the Ohio State University, having earned degrees in African American Studies, his bachelor's and master's, and in history, his master's and doctorate. He is currently an associate professor of history and African American Studies at Prairie View A&M University. Dr. Jones' current research interests focus on the plight of African-American males, an endeavor that has been most frequently expressed via his personal website, which you should all check out, Manhood, Race, and Culture, which you'll find at manhood-race-and-culture.com, and his YouTube channel by the same name. A lover of all facets of Africana studies, Dr. Jones has also ventured into creative writing that uses the Black experience and current events to examine and discuss Black America. The primary vehicle for the never-ending debates and discussions is Foolish Floyd, a contrarian that reminds readers of Langston Hughes' Jesse B. Simple, True Indeed. An initial manuscript titled Foolish Floyd, The Life of an African-American Contrarian is available for purchase, and I believe that would be on Amazon, but we'll get to that later. But in any event, family, without further ado, what we do want to do is bring on our good brother, Dr. James Jones. What's up, good brother? How you be?
I'm good. I'm actually very, very good. Just
That's
coming
good,
out
man.
of a symposium. I'm not in. Unfortunately, I'm not in Ohio right now. I'm stuck in Houston, Texas.
Texas.
Yeah, we got a heat index right now of 106 degrees.
Whoa, man! I visited Texas. I went through this Teach for America program years ago to be a teacher. And man, every time I came outside of the University of Houston, it was 100 degrees. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. It was beautiful. I liked it in Houston a lot.
Yeah, you came at the wrong time.
My brother, we are really honored to be here with you. My computer is having a little difficulty. But what I was hoping we could do is start with you giving us some background. Give us a little background on yourself, and particularly we're interested to know, how did you enter this road or this journey called Black Liberation Consciousness? I always like to ask people that because we all enter in different ways, and I find that to be really fascinating, actually. So how would you tackle that question?
Okay, let me deal with the first part being a little background on myself. I'm from the Midwest. I'm from a small town called Mansfield, Ohio. I think that at our peak, we might have made it to 60,000. If you've ever seen the Shawshank Redemption, that's my hometown.
Wow.
That was filmed in my hometown. We are a prison community. We had a prison, we had a General Motors factory, and we also had a steel mill. My father was a steel worker. My mother, data entry person for Gorman Rupp, and I'm a Buckeye through and through. You know, I went to the Ohio State University where, brother went across my degrees, African American Studies, all the way through history. And, I was raised up in a what could be termed a de facto racially segregated um, community. We were the first Black family to move on our street, and all the white folk disappeared. Kind of like what Malcolm said, that I ain't worried about you living in a Black community because as soon as you move in, all the white folk gonna leave. So that was my personal experience with that. Grew up with some class consciousness because of my father being labor union. I also worked in the same steel mill that he did. But how I got onto this road, I'm proud to say that I was never not on this road. As I said, I grew up within a quasi racially segregated community. I didn't deal with white folk in my K through 5 experience in elementary school. All my classmates, except for maybe one or two, were Black. All of my teachers, except for maybe one or two, were Black. And it was in many ways a nirvana, a euphoric experience. However, sixth grade came, and we had to leave from our elementary school and go to middle school. And they selected, and I still remember the names. It was myself, Stephanie Martin, Coretta Jones, Mike Drayton, and James Banks. They denoted us as gifted and talented. So they took us and they put us in the middle of classrooms that were miraculously 98 to 97% white. And that's when the fight began. And I remember asking, talking to my mother about it. My mother said, listen, your job is to go in there and show those white folk that we are as good as they are, if not better. She said, you cannot fail. You are, and keep in mind, I'm in the sixth grade. She said, we're sending you to represent us. And so that type of lesson combined with, I've always been a reader. And many people laugh at this, and I understand that why it's funny, but punishment for me, if I ever got in trouble, I used to always get to go to the library on Saturday morning with my mother. If I had a bad week at school or at home, she would literally sadistically drive me past the library so she could reinforce what I was missing out on because of my behavior. I've always been a reader. I've always wanted to learn something new. And, I came across this thing when I first grew up, I was reading a lot of mythology, Roman mythology and things like that. I'm from a small town, didn't know about African mythology at all. I actually hadn't even heard jazz music until I was in my teens. So I wound up having a class on Black history. And I still remember the professor assigned me to do a biography on Ethel Waters. That was my first foray into it. And then my major entry was I followed my mother to some type of symposium that they were having about African American children in the educational system. And I met a brother there that changed my life, Jawanza Konjufu. And
Jawanza Konjufu.
Yeah. He took time out of his day and he told me, he said, listen, young brother, I was a freshman in college. He said, if I were you, I would go back and I would read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I went and got a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X from the library of the school I was attending at the time, Bluffton College, a Mennonite school. And, Mennonite are kind of like the Amish. And they had this honor system where I still remember the pledge. If we took a test, they would say, well, at the end, you had to sign, I have neither given nor received or witnessed anyone receiving any aid during this exam. If you didn't sign it, they threw the test out. And so we found out that if we hadn't prepared for the test, just don't sign the honor pledge and it goes away. But I went to their library, and the reason I'm talking about, the system that they used, I actually liberated, I don't like to use the stolen word, I liberated a copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X from the library, and
I know somebody just like you. I'm not going to say his name though. You got
There's a few of us that are like
yes,
that.
sir.
You know. And
Wow.
so I spent, the next 2 days reading it. And then I read it again and again and again. And eventually I wound up leaving that school and found myself on the main campus of Ohio State. I became a Black Studies major the moment I hit that campus, and in many ways, it's kind of ordained in a weird way that the head of the department, Dr. William E. Nelson, great Black political scientist, Dr. Nelson actually was recommended for that job back in like 1970 by my mother's aunt.
Mhm.
And he's talking one day and he mentions my mother's aunt in class. And I went up to him and I said, Dr. Nelson, I think that I know who you were talking about. And he said, oh, you don't know nothing. And turns out Dr. William E. Nelson was next door neighbors with my grandfather, with my grandfather's people. And so from there, I just stayed on my grind and wound up eventually working for the Ohio State football program, which helped with tuition. And I stayed there until they fired all of us because we couldn't beat the team of North Michigan regularly. And I wound up getting a job at Prairie View A&M University.
Wow. So I guess you would kind of say that the great Jawanza Konjufu played a major role in steering you towards that kind of Black liberation consciousness.
Oh, most certainly. My mother and my father, they laid the groundwork for it. I would have never met Jawanza Konjufu had my mother not been attending those types of things. So yeah, but he was definitely instrumental, countering the conspiracy to destroy Black boys. Well, he did 1, 2, 3, 4. He did a bunch of editions of that. So yeah, I mean, he was really extremely instrumental in the fact that at University of Akron, he went ahead and he took time to talk to an 18-year-old and give me some advice. And that advice really, it was like a jet propulsion that led me. I went from Malcolm, and from Malcolm I go to here, and I go, what is this about? What is this about? And at the exact same time, hip hop was big. This is the late '80s, and I still remember Chuck D, Public Enemy, recorded and ordered, supporter of Chesamard. And so that led me to looking at who's this Chesamard. And eventually I find Joanne Chesamard, Assata Shakur. And by the time I was doing my MA thesis, I did my MA thesis on manhood ideology within the Black Panther Party and the Nation of Islam. And my doctoral dissertation was dealing with the Bay Area Panthers, creating revolution as they advance.
Well, let me ask you this. As you think back upon hip hop in the era in which you were a much younger man, let's say a college student, and you look at it now, what do you see to be the major trends that are encouraging and the major trends that are discouraging as you compare it to, let's say, the golden age of hip hop?
One of the things I always try and do is I sidestep generational warfare. And I think that a lot of what we do when we look back is, highlight this generational warfare. And I look at what hip hop was like when we came through in this quote unquote golden age of hip hop. When we talk about that golden age of hip hop, we're talking about Rakim, we're talking about PE, these highly nationalistic voices, Nas, and all of them. But we tend to not talk about Luther Campbell, and 2 Live Crew. We use historical erasure and move them, out of our. We forget, and he was the first brother before Bone Thugs and Harmony out of Ohio. that really made it big. Joski Love.
Mhm.
And most people won't even know who Joski Love is. And he was the one that did the Pee Wee dance.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
He went,
dun, dun.
he
Yeah.
went to my high school, and yeah,
Okay.
they jumped him. Unfortunately, he had to get a safety transfer. But yeah,
Yeah. We erase those guys, and then also because I think that when you first engage hip hop, that you believe that that's how it's supposed to be done. And when you see a preponderance of voices and representations that are not fitting with that, it rubs you kind of the wrong way and you shy away from it. But I've been fortunate to be in a classroom and I talk about hip hop, so I'm almost getting a refresher course every single class period about hip hop. Well, every semester, every year, and we talk about individuals who are being played on the radio right now. And because we're not steeped in that culture, we don't really have a pulse on what it is that they're doing. Um, kind of like PE when Chuck D had he had the line, they play the music, this time they play the lyrics. Clear sign that there was at that time some decisions from radio programming to not play a lot of nationalistic music. Um, I think it's the same today. When I list my top five, and I try to be very fair as far as generation and region, um, the cat that always makes it into my top five that people, they're surprised because there's definitely a generational gap between us, but it's Big Crit. The king recognized in time. Crit is, for my money, the savior of contemporary hip hop.
could you repeat that again, Dr. Jones? What name did you say?
Big Crit, Big Crit, Krit, the king recognized in time. You go listen to Crit. He has a song, I Don't Want to Be Another Nigga. He also has this song, unfortunately, I lost my mother and my grandmothers they went home to be with the Lord. He's got a song that time of the year when I'm missing them, tremendously, and any day I'm missing them, I listen to I Gotta Stay. And it's in many ways a letter that he wrote to his grandmother. You know, he's an incredible MC, and then of course you got Kendrick, you got J. Cole, and we definitely can't forget Lupe Fiasco. But these are cats who are, because we're not steeped in hip hop, we're not aware that they're, because it's kind of that philosophical question. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's there, does it make a noise? We can kind of say the exact same thing with hip hop. If Big Crit's I Gotta Stay is produced, but no one hears it, does it even exist?
Right.
And so I'm forced to deal with, and right now I'm actually completing edits on a chapter on the history of hip hop at Prairie View A&M University. And I've tracked down the 7 individuals who were actually in a yard listening to, in 1978 or 79, there was this big hullabaloo coming out of Houston about a new type of music coming out of, some of them say it was Chicago, other people say, no, I remember it being New York. And they get around the station wagon with the sound turned all the way up, and they hear for the first time in their lives the Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. But you look at those origins in what could be termed one of the centers of the Black Bible Belt community. But we've had DJ Mr. Rogers, you had DeRoe, you've had Bone, and although she didn't graduate, she didn't matriculate from Prairie View A&M University. Megan Thee Stallion was a student at PV. So for me, hip hop is alive and well, and I'm happy to say that. I just hate that other outside entities, as they always have been able to do, have captured hip hop, and they determine who the stars of hip hop are going to be. Who can we sell clothes off of? Who can we do this with? Who can we basically exploit? Um, and that's what they've always done. I sat up recently and watched this, the greatest and one mixtape ever, and it's three white boys who came in and they basically taped black ball players and made a fortune off of it. It's what they've always done, and we have to start. I'm not going to say do a better job. We have to really start owning our stuff.
Yes, sir. Agreed on that. Now I know that you have your blog, man, which is really exceptional, by the way. Well written,
Thank you, sir.
relevant to what's going on, dealing with current events, tying it up with some history and some really sharp analysis.
Manhoodraceculture.com.
Manhood, race, and culture. Yeah.
Yeah, no and. When I sat down to do it, I forgot to put the and in there. So it's just manhoodraceculture.com.
Yes, sir. Now, I'm curious to know, you said that some of your research interests deal with what's going on with black men. Mm-hmm. Would that be kind of linked to male studies, kind of what Thomas Curry does?
Yeah, I was actually on a panel with Tommy Curry years ago over at Texas A&M University. We're part of the A&M system. What he does is what I do is not like what he does. He's more of a philosopher, this highbrow type of cat. For me, I write for individuals like my homeboys. I write for my dad. I write, with the expressed intention of it being accessible to just a common brother. It's one of the reasons why out of everything I've done, and I actually just got a check in the mail yesterday for Foolish Floyd, for royalties off of Floyd. But it's one of those where Floyd has been the smashing success, even above the Panther stuff. And
let me interrupt you, Doctor, very quickly. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to give context and perspective to those watching. Mm-hmm. First of all, we're having difficulty, those of you logging into Zoom, because of a passcode issue. So I put on my Facebook page the link where you can watch it at Harlem Liberation School on YouTube. So I would say that's always the go-to. Go to us on YouTube and you'll find the live there. Secondly, I want to say that this brother that we're talking to, who is a professor at a 4-year university, Prairie View, is doing something that's unusual today. My critique of, I'm a fellow Africana scholar. My critique of many scholars is that what they're doing, only 2 people are going to read, only 4 people are going to see their presentation at the conference. And they need to be more grassroots. What he's done, for you to understand this Foolish Floyd, what we're talking about, and his blog, Manhood, Race, Culture, and his YouTube channel, Manhood, Race, Culture, is his, like we're doing at Harlem Liberation School. He's trying to bring this type of Africana studies perspective to the hood, or at least make it accessible, right? So that it's not just something that's in the Ivy Tower. And I think that y'all watching need to really appreciate that, because you may not know that, but that's very important. So that if he does present at conferences and does write his more erudite books for the scholarly community, he's making sure that the masses have access. And that's very, very important. Continue, brother. I'm sorry. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on it. I mean, it's one of the things that, for me as a historian, I know our people's story back and forth. And when I go to a conference or a lecture and I'm dozing, I know exactly what you're talking about. But man, bro, this is dry. Like, oh my God, and it's not where it's not. You're demanding that people arrive knowing what you know and have your same. And there's a reason. Like with Floyd grew out of my love for Langston Hughes's Jesse B. Simple.
Yes.
The Simple Stories. If you never read the Simple Stories, you should go back and read them. They are absolutely hilarious. And Floyd with one of Walter Mosley's books, where Tempest Rising or Tempest Landing or something like that, and it's a combination of those two things. Floyd is from Greenwood, Mississippi. Okay, nobody knows how old he is because he ain't gonna tell you how old he is. And he and this unnamed protagonist, they meet at places throughout Houston, Texas, and they simply chop it up with each other about different things. Floyd uh, falls in love with a woman, and he wants to show the protagonist these gifts that he's gotten. And I still remember the line that I wrote. Each doll, because she has a grandbaby, and he wants to, woo both of them. Each doll that he pulls out of that bag was whiter than the one before. And the story is built around the idea of black dolls. The Kenneth and Mamie Clark's black doll, white doll test. So it's, Floyd talks about hip hop. Floyd talks and Floyd really doesn't like very many black folk. He's highly critical of them. So yeah, I mean that's my sort of my popular culture piece, and it's the one that I enjoy writing on the most. It's the only one that I enjoy actually reading, because detached from it, I sit back and I laugh at some of the stuff that Floyd says. And many of my homeboys and my uncles and all that, they see things in Floyd that they've said, and they're like, man, you're trying to call me foolish Floyd. I'm like, nah, man, but Floyd is the average common man versus some of this stuff that other folk write. I'm like, what are we doing?
Right.
We're not, are we writing about black folk like they are lab rats, species and specimens to be examined and commented upon? Or are we trying to do what Huey P. Newton talked about when he talks about the revolutionary being a doomed man? Are we trying to equip them and get them to a point where they're able to really understand this thing and think for themselves about these various things that are impacting Black life, and be able to make some very advantageous and beneficial decisions for Black folk?
Yes, sir. Now, given that you do deal with male studies, you are a scholar, and I noticed in some of your writings you deal with a lot of current events. I'm curious to know your take, your perspective. The brother that recently died, Kevin Samuels, there's a lot of stuff back and forth. I don't want to get into drama like that, but I am interested to know what your thoughts are. There's these two sort of camps. One camp is the brothers that are the heterosexual brothers, let's say that are feeling somewhat left out of certain public discussions, who are feeling a little bit bullied upon intellectually by, let's say, certain feminist camps and what have you. And were very much in support of the brother Kevin Samuels. Then you have a lot of sisters or even males that identify as feminists who say that he was misogynist and he was harsh and he had a narrow kind of in a low view of women. Where do you stand on that? I mean, I have my own perspective on it, but where do you stand? Like, how do you make sense of him as a cultural phenomenon in the Black community?
I think that Kevin Samuels was the average Black man's warrior. He went to war for them. I love the brother. I love what he said, because I literally sat there and I listened to what it was he said without any emotion, without any of that. And I listened to some sisters call in and support him, and I listened to some other sisters call in for advice or what have you. That I hate to call people idiots, because I believe that comes from a lack of socialization and grounding and exposure, and it's usually not their fault. Um, Kevin Samuel showed what a huge segment of Black women are thinking when it comes to the idea of quote unquote securing the bag, as if life is totally about materialism, consumerism, and what have you. Yet at the exact same time, you have sisters who want equal standing with men in certain situations and who really are not prepared to even listen to um, what it is that Kevin Samuels was saying or what other Black men are saying. I mean, his thing was very mundane, very formulaic. That here you want a quote unquote high value man, um, and really your idea of, and he splits hairs and makes a differentiation between a high value man and a high earning man. What these sisters really are talking about is they want a high earning man. And to be fair, when you come into any discussion emotionally charged and really operating out of a position of confrontation, you're never, it's never going to be a good thing because you don't even know what this person is even talking about. There's a no win there, and ultimately for me, after I look at especially the response of this brother's untimely demise, how many people mocked him and they talked about him and what have you, somewhere along the way, that and this is why I think that education is and exposure is so important, and watching what's poured into your mind is so crucial. We've allowed our common historical experience, and I do believe that DNA has memory. We've allowed for other factors to trump that, to overcome the idea that hey, we still Black, and we all, as the old hip hop lingo goes, we all we got. We can never let that go, because in without emotion and in your sober mind, you know that if you caught in the wrong spot, it don't matter what your political affiliation is, your religious belief is, you are, what you are to those people. And they're going to do something horrendous to you that will put our minds back in the post Reconstruction, the Deer period, where they were lynching Negroes to force them back into a position of subservience.
Okay. Because I don't want to spend too long on this, but I do want to say, for me, I've heard sisters take, and I've heard some of the brothers take from the Nationalist Pan-Africanist community. For me, he represents definitely what a segment of brothers are feeling. And I think he came off, rest in power to the brother, he's now deceased. He came off as eloquent and intelligent, well composed, certainly well dressed, in that particular paradigm.
Yeah, image consultant.
Yeah, but my issue was more or less, this wasn't like Alambe Brath or like, like an Amiri Baraka, or this was a guy, he was a regular brother that might even have Negro-pean politics.
Yeah.
But all he really contributed was this piece that was sensational at a time where you got kind of the toxic Eurocentric feminism that some sisters are adopting, that can be a little man-hating, right? So he kind of was able to ride that way. But other than that, I'm not knocking our good brother. I don't know. I didn't really get it, see the big deal. And when I looked and tried to research a little bit about him, he wasn't talking about politics, economics, self-determination. He's really hitting on the, men being simps or men being pimps, men taking back control. Okay, I get it. I get that. But I just felt like that was overdone.
Yeah.
That part was overdone. Like,
Yeah, but the thing is that if you've been knocked down enough, disrespected enough, or and for a lot of black men being raised in single female headed households, they've never seen men standing on their own. They've never seen men able to stand up to a woman. For that segment of black men, they're gonna tune in. They're
oh
gonna
yeah.
tune in to see a sister
Oh yeah.
get
Yeah, I mean, like
denigrated.
he had a wide, I mean,
But
he clearly
yeah,
had a wide audience. He clearly spoke
yeah,
to a lot of people.
yeah.
But I'm thinking right now we getting slain in the streets every week.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right now, we don't have no real average family don't have no real assets.
Hmm.
We borrowing from this one, calling this one, and they's doing the same thing we're doing. So I'm thinking that our focus, to me, it was more of a more revelatory in terms of where we are. Like that to me,
Oh,
he was
without a
like
doubt.
he was a gnat.
Yeah.
Not disrespecting him. I'm just saying
Yeah.
what he's bringing. I felt like, man, we got so much bigger fish to fry over here
Hmm.
that's really not. Sisters, you're mad. Don't get too mad.
Yeah.
Brothers, you getting hyped up. Don't get too hyped up.
Yeah.
Because he may not support you. Like he may take this manhood piece that you feel you resonate with, but he, for all other intents and purposes, might be a straight up Negro and a
Oh,
reactionary.
yeah.
So
I
that's the
mean,
part, that I was kind of fiddling with. Like, what's the big deal here?
yeah. I mean, it's but see, as fellow nationalists, we're looking for the meat.
Yeah.
The presentation, don't bring it to me, don't bring my meal to me on a trash can. But I'm looking for the meat. I'm looking for the substance.
Yeah.
I'm looking for how do we get out of this? Um, how do we honor the legacy, of a Garvey, of a Malcolm, of these, a Huey P. Newton, all of these great thinkers that we had, these great leaders, and sitting around and arguing with one another about things that I'll be just quite honest that are not based in any type of really logical thinking or thought patterns. You have black women around here who are now, they may not articulate it, but they have adopted, they've fallen in line with what could be termed as white or European feminism. Totally going against the idea that the sisters in the 1960s, Black Power sisters advanced this idea of womanism. Alice Walker's great quote of, feminism is the womanism as purple is the lavender. The Black female experience is not, you can't line that up with what white women have been through. Okay. We've had to work together, to be able to even survive. Yet at the exact same time, the the model of manhood that black men were able to assume as soon as moments after slavery ended is predicated upon what they saw white men doing. And if you read the diaries of these white men, they're saying, listen, we need these Negroes to put their wives out there in the field. And the response the black men had was, well, your wife won't work in the field. So from that early moment, that kind of impacts how we look at manhood and masculinity. And sisters, any sister that ain't completely crazy will tell you, if you ask her to list her top 3 qualities of a man that she would consider, building a life with, she's going to name provider and protector. And let's be fair about this, that in this society, this white society, where white men are running corporations, businesses, they are the HR directors, they're going to let you know not only if you get a promotion, but if you even allowed to show up here Monday at 8 o'clock to work. Black men are in many ways tenuously employed. And there is no relationship between hard work and you being able to increase your financial bottom line. And when you have a group of individuals who have gone plumb crazy about white European fashion that's costing $2, $3, $4,000 for a purse that even Europeans ain't buying, okay? And if a man cannot afford that in his budget, well, he broke. And the harsh thing that people don't want to talk about is that the average black man is making around 42, 43,000. The average sister with this mythology of, oh, well, I'm a boss chick, I'm doing this and that. Y'all ain't even busting 38,000. Y'all need each other. We need each other. You know,
but see now, Dr. Jones, that's right and exact. I think the issue with that, and I don't want to spend too much time, but the issue with that is that what comes out of those discussions, those videos, almost is like a berating of the sisters. Like, oh, did you grow up with a father?
Mm-hmm.
How much you weigh?
Yeah.
How tall are you?
Mm-hmm.
You got a college degree? That doesn't. So, in other words, certainly you or I, in raising the issue of disparities with men and women, that wouldn't be right our approach to it, right? No. We would come with an understanding that we all jacked up in different degrees and in different ways, and we'd be trying to find out what are the sources of our disparities, of our miscommunication, and trying to come up with remedies to bring us together. Because as the proverb says, they get the man in the morning, they come to get the woman at night. We know that.
Yeah.
They're the majority of our population. Most of us, I grew up with my mom and dad, but many of us were raised with just the mom. So it's kind of like the way I was raised. If you see a brother or your people destitute or deficient in some very important way, and you have the resources to help them, that's supposed to be more of the focus, as opposed to, damn, man, you still smoking crack? How are you gonna smoke crack, brother? When you gonna get off the corner? But that angle doesn't typically work. The angle that works with us is empathy, compassion, some degree of patience, great love, and consistency. So I think that I'm not taking the woman's side or the men's side, but I just feel like, as a brother that wants to be free,
at
the end of the day, brother, I could like the brothers or like the sister or not, agree with everything they say or right or not, but that's where I stand. And so my leaning typically goes to the place where I feel is more inclined to point us to the direction of liberation. Now, with that segue, you are a college professor, good brother. You've had to write plenty of papers, and you had to write a thesis and a dissertation. You clearly would appreciate the importance of writing, I would presume. And you write a very, very good blog. How do you see this question as writing? Is writing a tool of liberation, or is that like a cliche, another one of the billions of cliches we have in our community? How do you take that?
You know, the idea, and this is an age-old saying, that the pen is mightier than a sword. I don't think until you really get some maturity and some understanding that you really understand that you know, you can, Huey P. Newton said, you know, you can kill a revolution, but you can't kill the revolutionary.
That's right.
It is it's not only a liberating tool, it's a, you know, for you personally. Writers know that they have to get it out. We have to write. If we didn't write, you know, I think it was Nikki Giovanni who said that if I could not write, I'd be in the middle of the street throwing Molotov cocktails. So it's personally liberating, but at the exact same time, it's providing some permanent, substantial breadcrumbs for your people. That this is how far we've gone. Now pick it up from here. There's no need for you to go back to step 1 or 2, because we as a people are at step 23, 24. And, you know, we combat especially within the nationalist community. I'm a revolutionary nationalist. I'm not a cultural nationalist. You're not going to see me running around here with a dashiki on, you know, talking pig Latin. You know, I'm aiming for, look, how do we get up out of here? How do we solve this? And as a revolutionary nationalist, I stand upon the principle that we need to be very serious about our intellectual diet. What is it that we're reading? What is it that we're listening to? And just sort of to go back to the whole idea of black male female relationship battles and what have you. How much time do you spend on that? You know, how many? You know, you want to win. Okay, you want to have the aha gotcha moment, and we're still enslaved. Okay, versus going ahead and saying, okay, yo, we've spent enough time on that. Now let's go ahead and deal with this other. Let's deal with economics. Who do we have in our midst that is a brilliant economist? Who can show us where we should be investing? Who can create a? We always talk about these life coaches. Who is taking the initiative to go ahead and say, listen, young black folk, by 25, your credit rating should be this. By 27, you should have purchased a home. By 30, you should be. That's what we need. We don't need somebody to sit up and, like Kevin Samuels would do. And he had his role, and I don't criticize the brother and what have you, but it is not the end all. We are no longer emerging from American chattel slavery, where we don't have people who are experts in fields. You don't have to go get PASA to go down to the courthouse and try and be your lawyer. You better get your criminal defense attorney that knows what he's doing. That's where we're at. And one of the things that I'll say to the revolutionary, the physical revolutionary minded brothers in our midst, the words of, once again, Huey P. Newton. I'm a big Panther guy. Huey says the revolutionary is a doomed man. Either you will succeed in your revolutionary struggle and liberate the people and no longer be needed, or you'll die on the battlefield trying to liberate them. So either way it goes, you're doomed. But I think that we have too many Hollywood revolution brothers who want to show up. Dr. John Henry Clark said it. He said, we got lights, camera, action revolutionaries now. They want to stand up. They want to be on CNN. They want to be on ABC. They want to, what we going to do is we going to, I saw a brother, some brothers in some city that had went to a Korean hair place, and somebody had put hands on a brother or sister, and they show up and they getting ready to, dress. We going to show you what we can do. Brother, use that as a challenge. You buy that empty lot across the street and you put up a building, a business to challenge what they're offering our people.
That's right.
And then you have an opportunity, because you got some money coming in, to practice. Don't become a capitalist. Don't go out and be full-blown capitalist. Practice some socially responsible individualism. Pull that money together and help somebody, even in your inner circle, start a business next to yours, doing something different from what you do.
And may I add to that, while we're doing that, you call the young lions and put on all black at night, and then go see them people that was messing with our people, because
versus going down there in broad daylight on closed
because at the end of the day, you understand, y'all watching, y'all know, at the end of the day, do understand that some things, prayer and essential oils and money are not going to sufficiently address.
Sage.
And sage. That's right. And our brother, our elder, man, Thomas Blood McQuarrie, man, rest in power, he told us, he was clear from the Black Liberation Army. He said, we decided that if there's going to be blood, it got to be blood on both sides.
Yeah.
So we're not advocating, obviously, any foolhardy, poorly planned stuff, but we're putting it out there. The brother says the economics, definitely. Yeah. But if the issue is also that somebody's beating us, then we got to beat their ass. Like, I'm gonna be real clear about that.
I don't understand. And this is Muhammad Ali, I think, said it. It was Ali or Malcolm who said, how in the world you so violent in Vietnam and you come back and you meek as a lamb? There's a role, and this is a lot of people laugh when I say this, but let's be honest. There's a role for the wild brother in the movement.
Oh yeah.
The hitter. There's a role for him. Now that role is not in front of the media.
That's right.
Okay, but he has a role.
That's right.
And you look at U.S. history, and you look at how the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. Okay, most people don't understand that Japanese government officials were actually in DC when those planes were on their way. They were sitting in DC. And when the attack came, they got up, walked down the stairs, and got in the cars and left. That's when you needed some DMX like brothers. Oh, no, where y'all going? Yeah, we don't care nothing about if it's being diplomacy or not. We getting ready to do something to y'all. And that's what makes it so crucial that brothers who are doing what I do, we don't shun or look down upon the brothers who may not be doing, who may not be in the academy, who may just be, may have just been released from prison and is trying to get something going. We all have to work together, but it goes both ways. The brothers in the academy have got to be accepting of brothers who are not in the academy, and the brothers who are not in the academy can't pass judgment upon brothers who write for a living.
That's right.
Who actually go up and stand really think about how courageous it is for you to go somewhere and to stand in the midst of white folk and to represent for the race. When I go to North Dakota invited me. I was in North Dakota and South Dakota. There are no black people. Well, there are a couple black folk in North Dakota and South Dakota. And I know I'm behind enemy lines and I'm looking for allies. So the first thing I do when I walk out on stage, I'm here to talk to these people about race, hip hop, or something, to debate somebody. First thing I do, I make eye contact with a brother and it's always one brother sitting down front. And I just give him the universal brother. If he can't return that, I know good and well I'm in trouble, and I'm gonna have to represent. So we gotta go ahead in every way and close rank. And the greatest disorder affecting black folk, it ain't high blood pressure, it ain't hypertension, it's not diabetes, it's mental illness. You wake up in a society that teaches you at every turn to denigrate blackness. And if you're not aware of that, you're going to act on that. And it's one of the reasons why black folk are so quick to jump on each other, so quick to celebrate at each other's misfortune. There ought to be some moments that are sacred amongst our people. And let's be honest, who taught you that you could go outside any kind of way? That didn't come from us. You go back and look at how our grandfathers and our grandmothers, they didn't let you go outside showing your color. Okay.
Well, cheeks.
I
don't mean these cheeks either.
Exactly. And so we got to be, it goes all the way. For me, it all starts with the mind. A man is as he thinketh. And if you're thinking negative about black folk, let's be clear, you're part of the problem. And you're going to be part of the problem until you get that straight. Go talk to somebody. And when I say talk to somebody, you ain't even got to go to no counselor. Go down to the local barber shop. Local barber can talk to you, and the brothers that are in there, and I think that it's in those spaces, those closed, private spaces, that you're reminded of the beauty of black people in general.
Now, Dr. Jones, that was powerful summary, man, what you just broke down. I wanted to know, we talked about revolutionary brothers. We mentioned it quickly. And we talked about writing as a tool of liberation. For those who don't know, let's take the American Revolutionary War or the Black Power movement, which was a war against white supremacy in this country. Could you help people understand how writing helped to kind of be a catalyst for people organizing and mobilizing and challenging or disrupting their oppression?
Certainly. I mean, when you talk about, I'll use both of them. When you talk about the American Revolution, you got to remember that it's the rhetoric that is coming up out of these rebellious, disrespectful colonists who'd have been propped up and been supported. Because you got to remember, most people misremember the founding of what will be this nation, and they cite Jamestown as being the first colony. Jamestown was not the first colony that was settled by the British. It was Roanoke. And they got to the point in Roanoke where they ate each other. They ate their kids. Spouses ate each other because they couldn't make it.
Mm.
So now you fast forward to the British supporting them and sending them supplies and helping them, but they get to a point where they're strong enough. And the reason, and one of the things we never talk about, the reason these colonists became so strong so fast is the labor of stolen Africans.
Mm.
It's the reason why when the British decided to go ahead and put them in their place, they banned the transatlantic slave trade. This is the first thing they did. They said, you can't bring no more in. Okay, now, but these colonists are talking and they're writing, give me liberty or give me death. Is that not a call to arms? If we look at Thomas Paine's common sense, use your common sense. Look at nature. Which is bigger, the sun or the earth? Which one rotates around the other? Use your common sense. It makes no sense for an island like Britain to control a continent like we are.
Mm-hmm.
They're riling their people up. They're teaching them the art. They're doing the exact same thing that Fox News does to people on a daily basis. They are tailoring that message and really propagandizing you and getting you to believe and think what it is that you believe and think. You think that them crazy Republicans are uninformed? Oh yeah, they're informed, but they're just informed about what they wanted them to be informed about.
Mm-hmm.
So writing is crucial for our people. When you look at the Black Power era, you really have to go back and you gotta tip your hat. It's not always writing for us, but it's definitely speech giving, debating. We're talking about a activist intellectual class. We're talking about Malcolm. We're talking about Stokely Carmichael. Okay. We're talking about brothers like Mutulu Shakur. Okay. Asada. And then you have this entire cadre of Black women who are going to begin writing. You have Alice Walker with The Third Life of Grange Copeland. If you think she did Black men a disservice on The Color Purple, read The Third Life of Grange Copeland. Brownfield Copeland has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the idea, and then of course you have the Black arts movement. You're dealing with brother Leroy Jones, aka Amiri Baraka, and all of the intellectual thought that is coming out of them about building a Black society. One of the things that we're doing that's a disservice to our legacy, we're trying to put the cart before the horse. We want a physical revolution, but we're not really clear about how we're going to administrate and run a nation. Now, one of the it's a hopeful thought and it's a scary thought. What happens if God decided that he was going to take everybody but African Americans, meaning those who are the descendants of American slaves, away from the planet Earth? What would we do?
Right.
Who knows how to run a power plant?
Come on and talk. That's right.
Who understands the banking system, the financial system? And one of the scariest things about it is quite simply, far too often, so many of the brothers who rise through charisma and through their natural given talent, they know how to talk to people. They know how to ride that emotional wave. Like Kevin Samuels, perfect example. How many of those brothers have thought past killing white folk?
Right.
Past a physical revolution?
Right.
Because that's, I would argue, more important than a violent physical overthrow of the nation. Because what's next? And if your only model of leadership, if your only understanding is of capitalism, you don't understand socialism, you don't understand socially responsible individualism, you stand the danger of replacing a white tyrant with a Black one. And if history's taught us nothing, you'd be in a no better state than before.
And sometimes worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Now let's now pivot to how your writings fall in this pantheon of writings that are pushing us to think, pushing us forward, pushing us to be analytical and critical. When did you start Manhood, Race, and Culture to your blog?
Wow. Maybe 10 years ago. I'm one, I'm one of those old school cats. I haven't even had a cell phone for 20 years. It's just not my thing. I don't want to be tethered to nothing and nobody. There are times when I want to just go down to Galveston and sit there and look at the water. I don't even want the chance that you're going to disturb me. So it was probably about 10, maybe even 15 years ago.
And why did you write that blog, my brother? What motivated you to write that?
It was I had a class that had some students in it, one of my history survey classes, and I'm lecturing and they have their phone out. And I'm like, if this ain't the most disrespectful shit, because I think that they're texting. And they're like, no, our book is on here and we're taking notes. I'm like, what? Okay, didn't even believe it. And so they issued a challenge. And that challenge was, we challenge you to do something with technology. And that's how manhoodraceculture.com was born. I did it to spite them. And lo and behold, I've been writing it. And in many ways, it allows me to get my voice out. And at the exact same time, I'm writing journal articles, I'm writing books. It takes a while for you to get a book done. My blog allows me to do something almost, I won't even call it, if there's something shorter than short term, it's that, where I can sit down for 30 minutes to an hour and I can say something. And that fuels me in regards to the other things that I'm dealing with. And I also am a stickler for independent Black male voices that speak in Black interest and from a Black male perspective. And it's the reason why I've never put ads up on my site. People have contacted, oh man, you got 200,000 people coming to your site, I'll pay you this. I'm not going to do that. I want something in my life to be completely pure and not influenced by any outside entity. And Manhood, Race, Culture is in many ways homage to my mother, who I remember asking her this question: with all of the things that our ancestors have given, for us to be here, what do we owe them? And she didn't miss a beat. She said, your life. And that's in many ways what it is. And I will always have Manhood, Race, Culture, and it will always be independent and pure. And I'll try, as I get more technologically savvy, then I'll add more features to it, but it'll always be aimed at Black folk, at uplifting Black folk and discussing things from a Black male perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, brother James Jones, because I find myself battling with brothers and sisters all the time around this concept of the real work. So-and-so is doing the real work. And I'm like, well, what's the illusionary work? It seems to me that a nation needs so many working parts.
Yeah.
And for people who get lost, well, what would a nation need? I say, you don't have to speculate, brother. You're living in a nation right now. What do you take a journal and write down every day what you do, and you'll get a sense. You put something in the post office, right? You go shopping for food and clothes. You call somebody. Somebody gets hurt. You go take them to a hospital. All of those things are part of a nation. Do you ever find yourself trying to help people who think like you or who have similar politics to be more nuanced in their thinking? Like, bro, you can't hate soap because it's white. You know what I mean? Just so,
brother,
you ever find yourself doing that?
Oh, without a doubt, all the time. One of the one of the brothers that I work with, we do a lot of podcast and Zoom stuff together. And we're actually thinking about doing a new podcast, sort of, you know, doing some other stuff just to do something different. He can be one of those brothers where, you know, he gets worked up and the next thing you know, oh, you know, he done popped off and then went crazy. And when he calms down, he'll say, "Doc, I'm sorry. You know, it just took over me." My thing is that so much of that for me is reactionary, and it's sort of like a jet plane dumping some fuel. You know, you were carrying this, and now you got to dump it off, and there oftentimes it's an emotional dump. An emotional dump is not going to move our people forward. We know what they're doing. Now the question becomes not only what is our response, but what is our proactive move in regards to that? You know, look at, one of the lessons I try to teach to my students is how they view the world. And we're out in Waller County, and Prairie View A&M University literally sits on top of a slave plantation, the Alta Vista plantation. And my students will say, "And we don't have so and so and so," and they just complain about it. And I'm like, you got to reorient your thinking. You're a business major. Okay. So when you say we don't have, it really ought to resonate within your mind of, I'm gonna start. I'm going, and that's the thing. That's what I call the challenge. If there are people who are exploiting Black folk and it bothers you to the point of action, issue a challenge to them. Create a business that does the exact same thing across the street and put a Black on, and now know what you're doing, and put a Black owned business sign there. There's a brother from my hometown who had a rib joint, a barbecue joint, did phenomenally well. I'm talking about this brother that had this place open for like 30 years. It's right on the edge of the Black community. So white folk could come one block into the community, get some food, and they could go right back out. Okay, he in a perfect location. He decides he's going to shut down his 30-year spot in the community and go out to the mall. Goes out there to the mall. One of my uncles, Clarence, my uncle Clarence, he said, "Man, come on, man, how stupid is that? You can't go eat no barbecue, no sticky barbecue ribs, and then go into the mall filling on clothes. He getting ready to, to fail." And the brother's business did fail, and he had to become a cook in the back of a white business. And you think about servicing your people. You think about loving your people. Black folk need to do much less talking, more thinking, and more acting. You can create a business plan. If you don't know how to, you have more access to more technology with a phone that you carry in your pocket than I ever did growing up. I remember, I know you remember this as well, brother, going up to that public library, and you had the card catalog, and if it wasn't there, if you bought one of those Athlon sports magazines, you bought that and somebody got traded, it wasn't no update. That's what you had. You had to imagine what it's gonna be like without him playing quarterback for y'all. We got to be active. One of my frequent sayings is that salt ain't gonna move. When you sit down to eat, if you want some salt or some pepper or something on your food, you got to reach out and get it, and you got to put it on. You got to take some action. Otherwise, you're going to eat some bland food, especially if you eating at a non-Black establishment. You're going to eat some bland food, but you could correct that.
That's right. That's right. That proactive spirit, my brother.
Yeah.
That proactive spirit. There's no replacement for that. You can give people 1 billion computers that are super fast and all types of technology, but there's something about this right here that is, you can't substitute for that.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the messages, and I hate that, to say this, as of course as I said earlier, I'm a revolutionary nationalist, but I just talked to the Asians, the Mexicans, and the white folk, and they said, "Yo, Black people, they tired. When y'all gonna show some ingenuity and some interest in showing this world what y'all can do?
Mhm. That's interesting. That's interesting because despite all of our sicknesses and our issues, and despite over 400 years of oppression, we continue to show our ingenuity and
Yes.
resourcefulness. Like, for real, if you think about all the ish we've been through from each other and from outside, and for how long that has continued, how concentrated and intense that was, we're walking miracles. You see a brother or sister that's not crazy and they have some degree of kindness in their heart, right? That's a miracle. Literally,
it is truly a testament to miracles and the grace of God.
Yes, sir.
That you can see another Black person and both y'all speak to each other.
That's right.
Because there's been horrific psychological damage done, to the point where you don't even know who you are anymore, and that's a major problem, and we blurred the lines between generations and what have you. I'll never forget. I was walking I forgot something in my car, so I had to go get something out of my car and make it back to my office before my 8 o'clock class. And so I got the item that I needed, and I'm walking up to my building, and it's a glass door, so I can see the reflection behind me. And there are 3 African American young ladies, college students, who are walking up. So I hold the door to let them in. And so they walk in, and one of them says to the other 2, see, even these old niggas be trying to look at ass, trying to holler. Okay. I say nothing. I go to my office because I'm in a hurry trying to make it to my 8 o'clock class. Make it to my 8 o'clock class. Guess who's sitting there? And after it's over, I just want to apologize for. I said, no, don't apologize. Stand on what it is that you believe. But you need to check your soul. Okay, how are you processing things? Because there's some things fitting in your soul that shouldn't be there. The same thing with I had a lunch date with one of my former students. I like to stay in contact with them, and what have you. And she's a Mexican girl, and we're sitting there, and her boyfriend was coming to meet us because she's like, "Oh, you gotta meet Dr. Jones," blah blah blah. We're sitting there just talking, and a sister actually came up to our table and told me, she don't want you. You need to come back home, and blah blah blah, and be with our sisters and blah 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 blah. Okay, her boyfriend comes, sits down. My first time meeting him, he was a brother, and we sit there, we chop it up. Getting ready to leave, she comes up to me and says, "I need to apologize." I'm like, "No, you need to go see a therapist." Because out of all of the gaps that were possible there, you filled your gaps up with that I am 30 years her senior, and I'm here trying to hit it. There's something wrong with how you're processing information. Your soul has gotten sick. And I think that we have to be honest with each other about that. And we got to be honest with ourselves. If you know something wrong, go get some help.
That's deep. Now, I did want to pause because this is typically around the time that we try to take questions and even comments from those watching. Now, we have quite a few people watching us live on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. I want to just shout them out.
Yeah, I get scared. I get scared when we have these live questions.
Oh man, stop, brother. One thing I'll say, brother, there's no hot seats here with me, man. We just having conversation. I'm not like a real journalist like that, No, I'm just trying to get information out. So you don't have to ever worry about that.
I had a sister ask me on a live show, "Are you married to a white woman?" Those are the things that you say. I'm like, no. But go right ahead, my brother.
Yeah, I first do want to show some as courtesy to shout out some people who have joined us on YouTube. We got Brother Mark McPhee, got my queen bee, my baby girl Brenda Hilaire in the building. We have Sister Sheila in the building. We got that's who I see as of now. And there've been some very good comments. Brenda says we must be mindful when loving our people. The wounds run deep, like disabilities, and you can't always see the injury. That's a very good point. You can't always see what's wrong, quote unquote, with the person. That's a very good point. Very, very good point.
You know, to that point, I'll tell you that I'm an avid. I love to work out. That's my sanctuary. You know, I'll be once we finish, I'll leave. I'll go get a lift in, and I'm usually in the gym. You know, with my noise canceling headphones on and all that. And I had a conversation recently with a brother who was like, "Oh man, you know, I want to be like you," and blah blah. And I said, "Bruh, no, you know," I said, "Do you realize I'm an amputee?" And he's like, "What? No, no, no." And I'm like, yeah, but people don't, you know.
If you don't mind me asking, where?
What? Left leg.
Wow. Yeah. The complete leg?
No. Down on the foot area. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went through that, and ironically, talking about Foolish Floyd, I was relegated to because of course I can't put any pressure on it, you know, on my foot. I wrote my first Floyd story. I was chained to basically a recliner, and I would have my laptop right next to me. And one night I wrote my first Floyd story to just see if I could do it, and it turned out to be it's my favorite Floyd story of all time. Yeah. And so you don't always know the damages that people are carrying, and the fact is that when you're talking about being black in America, you done been through some damage, you done been through some stuff, and you know, and we have to. I think that at some point we need to all be trying to get well, psychologically, mentally, spiritually, and and I think we owe that to ourselves. But we also owe it to ourselves to try to make a honest evaluation about a person that we may be interested in, or even in an organization or some type of partnership with, that if they're not where, you know, you need them to be, if there's going to be some conflict there, let's go ahead and move on and seek some other avenues, because that adds to not only their trauma, but could also throw you back into a spiral of some trauma as well. Yeah. So I agree wholeheartedly with what the sister wrote. Yeah.
I shaded that. I shade definitely. And I'm just trying to see here what else we got. Sister Sheila talks about the need to love more people, be more connected, so we can achieve our goals and have dignity. And she says, we have this challenge everywhere we are. It's funny, man. It seems like no matter who I have on Harlem Liberation School's broadcast, no matter what we're talking about, we inadvertently come back to this issue of trauma and healing, no matter what we're talking about. So that tells me that that's important, that we can't be in denial, that we got our emotional intelligence we got to work on, our empathy, self-evaluation, knowing when to take time and for ourselves, knowing how to maybe even socialize in a way that's a little more evolved, let us say. So we have a lot of work to do, and it's good. It's not a bad. I don't say this in a way that's like lamenting, because this is good work to do. If this work is done, we're better people.
Yeah.
And you can only give what you have.
Yeah.
So, right. So if you want more to give, we got to work on ourselves. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. I mean,
it's good challenges.
I mean, it's a phenomenal thing to have self-awareness, to develop the tools needed for introspection. You know, I naturally lean towards being an introvert. Many people in my family, they crack up that I lecture. You know, they'll come here and they're like, "Ain't no way that's the same cat that you know, they grew up that would not speak." But there are times when, like, if I go, like, and it's one of the weirdest things is that I actually had to create a character. His name is JT. That's who goes on stage and talks to people and banters back and forth. And if their initial exposure to me is on a stage in a public setting or what have you, and when I leave that setting, I immediately go back to who I actually am. And
Mhm.
many people say, oh, well, he wasn't friendly, he was kind of standoffish, and it's not that at all. It's I'm literally exhausted from having to put myself somewhere other than I naturally am, and I need to at times, we talked about the Yankee stuff earlier, but I need to at times be alone. I need to be at the gym. I need to, and when I'm at the gym, I prefer you not talk to me, because I'm
It's the
I'm
sign of an introvert. Definitely introvert.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We lose energy the more we engage.
yeah, I'm
Extroverts gain energy the more they engage. Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
I'm listening to brand new again. I done went back to 80s, 90s hip hop. This is, for this 2 hour period. Let me do me. Now when I'm done, I've had people who actually brought copies of Foolish Floyd to the gym. They've seen a local news interview, and oh man, I bought your book. Will you sign it? And I break off what I'm doing to sign the book. I'm grateful that for the support and what have you. But it take me a little while to get back to the point where I'm back zoned out and lifting. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
Mhm. All right, and we're going to see if we have any more people because this is basically the time when we start closing down. I know Brenda says, the Queen says, until we clean and stabilize the house, we cannot build, speaking metaphorically and literally, because she
Yeah.
actually helped. She was actually cleaning our house today, yesterday. So it's literal and,
But you say
and,
she just sent
metaphorical.
she just sent a shot at you, huh?
Yeah, literal and metaphorical. Man, let me ask you a question, man. That we have this thing, we have a lot of complexes. We're not freaks of nature. All humans have many complexes. It's
Mhm.
complicated being human, right? But we're an oppressed, colonized people. So of
Yeah.
course we have a fair share of complexes. We have
Mhm.
this thing about education.
Mhm.
There are people who seriously believe that the college education or even high school education for that matter,
Mhm.
um it's the white man's, because we're obviously here, it's the white man's education, and
Mhm.
by definition it's something that we should not seek. It has to completely be African centered.
Mhm.
Then there are people who say, man, the hell with that, I'm trying to get paid, we need this degree to get a job or whatever, that's what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And then there's people who say, well, both of y'all are a little off. It's
Mhm.
more than, it doesn't matter if it's the white man's or not, we're going to get what we want to do what we got to do. Where do you stand on that?
As an educator, and listening to the question from the very moment that you mentioned education, I don't want you to think you or the audience to think I'm crazy or whatever, but I can hear Dead Prez, they schools,
Mm.
playing in my head. It's one of my favorite songs and what have you. I side, although this may seem to be very contradictory, I side with every side of that argument that in many ways, we need to stop referring to a lot of the experiences that our children are having in these quote unquote schools as an education, because in
Mm.
every way they are indoctrinations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't fault necessarily the teacher because the teacher has been trained to teach a certain curriculum. And if these kids do not pass at a certain threshold, then you're going to lose your job. That's if it's not liberating, that's indoctrination for you. And if I can do it for a second, one of the things that, because my students all feel they're exceptional, that didn't happen to them. They're not, and we talk about the Panther Breakfast program, And I tell them, I said, let's do a little experiment to see if you've been a victim of this as well. And I tell them, go ahead and complete the next line. And the next line, the first line is "Black is beautiful." And they'll shout out things like, "And so are you," or, and then black
Free
is,
Huey.
and they have no idea for you. Okay. So I give them the next one, and I'm like, now y'all said that y'all would participate. If you knew the next line, go ahead. And I say, "Old MacDonald had a farm," and they're like, "E-I-E-I-O." And I'm like, which one is more useful for you? It's the
Right.
reason why you read the Diary of Anne Frank and you ain't read Malcolm. You ain't read Asada. I
Right.
went through the exact same thing. That's
We all did,
indoctrination.
man. Yeah.
So I get that.
That's right.
But what you have to do, and it's sort of one of the things that I explain to my students who are going into whatever industry they're going into, go in there and learn the tools and the skills. Learn what you can. Okay. You may be working at a Mexican restaurant and have designs of doing a soul food restaurant. Well, look here, go in there and understand pricing of food. Go in, there's something to be learned from there, from that. Now, that other group of individuals who are like, I'm just trying to get paid. Listen, you live in a capitalist nation and access to money matters mightily. Okay. I don't necessarily knock that. But what I do knock is the idea that you need to have a personal business ethics class. You need to understand the concept that she's one of my professors at Ohio State, Dr. Stephanie J. Shaw, wrote about in her book, What a Woman Ought to Be and Ought to Do. She uses this term that I just carry with me everywhere: socially responsible individualism. Go out and make that money, but understand that you could use $1,500 of that money and sponsor a little league baseball team or a basketball team. We need you to go get that money, because without that money, there's nothing that we can do. Okay, we need you to get that money. And for many of the brothers who are saying, forget all of that, this and that and blah blah. Well, you're living in a fantasy land. Okay, you really are, because the revolution, when Ukraine fought back against Russia, we had to send them billions of dollars in materials. Okay, if you ain't gonna get in, I mean, just one of my pet peeves is when people bullshit themselves. Be honest with yourself.
Right.
Okay, if you know that you ain't gonna do nothing, go ahead and accept that and just say, "Yo, man, I'm just here to, passing through this realm," and sit to the side and shut up. Okay, so I'm as an educator, I recognize what the standard school curriculums are, and I recognize how they're created. And if you want to look at one of the areas that, if we were really scientific about addressing this thing, we need to have an entire generation of education majors aimed not at becoming teachers, but aimed at becoming curriculum specialists. We need to get them in that room where they can say, well, yeah, okay, that's fine. But what we need to be teaching these kids in addition to that is this. Because how many lessons on Thomas Jefferson without talking about Sally Hemings can one afford?
Right.
Before they go crazy, before they tune out all education. So it's a complex thing. And I'm like I said earlier, every Saturday I got to go to the library. My mother supplemented what it is that they were doing. And my mother's was not college educated, but she knew to take me and let me wander. And I wondered, over the mythology. I would read about animals and snakes and things like that. But when, I have a voracious appetite for learning and reading. And so once that's the foundation, the building block, I can sit down and read for weeks without leaving home. I'm an introvert. That's a part of who I was born, but there's also a stamina and a discipline that I've developed over time. We need people that have that. okay, and have some guidance and some humility and understanding that when I met John Henry Clark, I knew I didn't know what he knew. Nowadays, that you got these one book scholars, and the only thing worse than a one book scholar is a one YouTube video scholar. They literally believe that they know what we know. You don't. But what I want to do is give you what it is that I know, and you utilize the youth and your longer time on earth to go ahead and advance it, and then you pay it forward to the next one.
Right. That's
We
right.
need to get back to that, where you sit at the feet of some individuals, and let's be honest, if you're privileged enough to be one of these individuals that people are seeking to learn from you, know your shit. Okay, and also understand that that is a revered, honored, and treasured, should be cherished position for you to be in. So you do not take a single thing. I don't care if it's a piece of thread. I don't care if it's some sister, you want her to pull her panties to the side so you can get you some. You don't do it, because you're setting us back more than you could ever imagine, because those that you victimize will never, ever, ever, ever trust and believe at the level that they trusted and believed before they were harmed.
Mm, that's real. That's real. Well, Dr. Jones, Dr. James Jones, writer of a really beautiful blog, Manhood, Race, Culture. You got to check it out.com. Also, you have Foolish Floyd. Now, is that one book or more?
You know, I've only published one of them, but I got like 4 or 5 Floyds. I've been in negotiation with my cousin, who created a publishing company about publishing the others. So yeah, it's only one right now, but I got 4 or 5 of them sitting on my laptop. So yeah.
Okay, get that on Amazon, correct?
Yes, you can get that right there on Amazon. Foolish Floyd.
Right. And
the life of an African American contrarian. Floyd is that uncle that got an opinion about each and everything that you can imagine. And sometimes Floyd is correct, other times Floyd is wrong.
And often very funny.
Yeah, Floyd's hilarious. You know, many people ask me why I put him in his origins in Greenwood, Mississippi. It's really to honor a brother in the movement that the movement has largely forgotten, Willie Ricks. Greenwood, Mississippi. Yeah, Mukasa. Yeah. Greenwood, Mississippi is, of course, where he changed the chant from freedom now to what do you want, Black Power. So that's my honoring of that brother right there, and that spirit of that brother. So when Floyd talks to me, it's in Mukasa's voice.
Man, listen, I'm really grateful for your time, good brother. We try to provide a diverse look of our people to our people, so that we understand that greatness and beauty and dynamism comes in so many different forms, not one form. And so you are a part of this, being a brother who is a college professor and Africana Studies scholar at that, and has actually written a book that's actually kind of a fiction book to get these really complex political and controversial political ideas across in a whole different way. Is brilliant. And man, we're glad to have you here.
Man, I'm so honored to be here. You know, Black men love Floyd. I'll say that. If I can get the book in their hands, oh, they absolutely love Floyd. And one of the funny stories that I have about Floyd, some of my students found the book and started reading it. Some of my male students, and they come to class. First question: when's the last time you saw Floyd? And it dawned on me, they actually don't understand that Floyd is fiction. And I'm like, man, I saw Floyd yesterday, and they're like, man, tell him I said, what's up? I'm like, oh,
They
okay, yeah.
like the archetype, huh?
Yeah, they like Floyd. I mean, they like Floyd like I like Jesse B. Simple and Tempest Landry, and that's a part of our tradition of that sort of a Nasi the spider, that trickster who's able to get himself out of situations. Floyd is, he's who he is, and I that's all I can say about him. He's definitely not me, but I realize he's a part of me. He's I have, and I believe that all of us have some Floyd, male and female. We got some Floyd in us. So
Absolutely.
so
And man, we
definitely.
glad for you being who you are, not just Floyd, but you being who you are, and using that noodle of yours, man, to really know our people and what's going to connect with them, and know that you're going to give them a little bit of the intellectualism, and you're going to give it to them in a whole different way. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
We thank you for your time. Those of you watching, make sure that you share this. Let your people know if they missed it to watch it on the recorded version on YouTube. And most importantly, make sure you support our good brother who sacrifices his time and energy to make sure that you have relevant, incredible information. Go to manhoodraceculture.com. Type in James Jones III or Dr. James Jones and Amazon, and go copy you the Foolish Floyd book, and there'll be more to come. And just support the brother, shout him out, tell him, yo, I saw you on the show, Harlem Liberation School, love what you had to say, or disagree with what you had to say. Can we talk about it? Whatever it is, but let's start engaging each other respectfully and critically, and in a way of supporting each other, because we can be supportive, but it's always beautiful to be critically supportive.
Yeah, certainly.
Right?
And my thing, like I told you, you're gonna look up when the Harlem Liberation School is meeting. You're gonna look up one day, and I'm gonna be there. You have my word for that. My best friend lives he used to be in Harlem, there in Brooklyn now, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and now they're trying to come back to Harlem. But they got pushed out because of he sold his place and got married, sold his place. They go to Brooklyn, and his wife is a Harlemite, and she wants to come back, and so they're trying to navigate the prices.
Yeah, they would have said that bread.
They used to live. I can tell you'll know exactly where they lived at. The building where the Sugar Shack used to be.
Get out of here.
Like 139th Street or something.
Get out of here, man.
Yeah.
I used to be in the Sugar Shack spitting poetry every Wednesday, man. What?
Yeah. I've been in the Sugar Shack. Yeah.
Really?
And I used to go to St. Nicholas Avenue Park, and I would go up there and I would read. Nah, man. I would just go up there and read. The chess thing up there, look here. We had, I remember me and Damon, we had like $10 between us. He's, man, I know where we can flip this to 20. We go up there, man. He must have been playing a chess wizard. Sat down from this dude across from this older dude. And I'm like, oh yeah, we got this in the bag. I don't understand chess, so I don't know what's happening. Okay. All I know is after about 4 moves, Damon stood up and was like, all right. I'm like, what you mean, all right, man? You better get our money. He said, oh man, we didn't lost, man. He did, but it was up in St. Nicholas Avenue Park where I'm sitting there, the traffic's going by, and I'm just sitting there reading, and this brother sat down next to me and he said something, and I'm like, huh? And so he says it again. I still didn't catch it. And the third time he said it really loud, like I was deaf. And he was speaking Spanish. And I'm like, I said, man, I don't speak no Spanish. I'm black. He said, what? He said, oh no. He said, look here, man, I ain't trying to be disrespectful. Your mama done lied to you. Okay. If you walk down there, you'll run into Spanish Harlem. I bet you find your daddy sitting down there on a stoop somewhere. So yeah, I spent a lot of time up there. So I'll be around.
Wow. That's all right. Yeah.
Yeah,
He was
brother.
right around the way.
Yeah.
Right around the way.
Sugar Shack.
All right. Well, man, we get ready to sign off. Want to thank Dr. James Jones for all his insight and input. We want to thank all of you watching live or who will watch in a later recorded version. And as always, family, you know what we say. We don't listen to the corporate control media. We don't listen to the coons and the Negroes. We believe that despite of our oppression and because of who and whose we are, we will win. And that's just what it is, family. That's just what it is. We organize, mobilize, study, work on ourselves to be our best and work together. We will win. Dr. Jones, thanks again, brother. Salute to you, man. Peace and black power to you, brother.
Peace, my brother. Peace. Love you. Peace.
See,